While Jerry was fixing his driveway, he noticed a metal grate he had never seen before. Intrigued, he tugged on it and discovered it was actually a trap door. What he found inside was more astonishing than he ever imagined. Without wasting a moment, he grabbed his phone and dialed the police. Jerry's heart raced as he tried to process the information that he had just stumbled upon. Was what he was seeing even real? His voice wavered as he tried to share every intricate detail with the police, but even he questioned how it all sounded. Would the police buy his story? Shortly after that, Jerry could faintly hear the wailing sirens of the police approaching. He had swiftly ascended the ladder and anxiously anticipated their arrival on his driveway. There was absolutely no way he would ever venture back into that room. Jerry could hear the police entering and their voices were filled with confusion. In the darkness, he anxiously wished they saw what he knew was hidden down there. However, when they emerged, Jerry found himself in disbelief. What had Jerry discovered in the secret room? Why did he contact the police? Jerry had been plagued by his disheveled driveway since he first stepped foot in his new home. Despite living there for 3 months, he just never seemed to find the time to spruce it up. The drive was a chaotic mishmash of tools and garden debris from his attempt at landscaping. After procrastinating for a while, he finally mustered up the energy to tackle the task on Sunday. He turned on some 90s tunes and got to work tidying up. However, as soon as he began fixing cracks on the edge of his driveway using cement, he made an exciting discovery. He suddenly noticed something that had previously gone unnoticed: a metal object lodged within the driveway. It resembled a sewer hatch in some ways, except it had a rectangular shape. Jerry thought it wasn't a big deal and thought about ignoring it completely. However, while Hugh was working on his driveway, he couldn't help but catch sight of the mysterious metal hatch below him. Eventually, he couldn't resist the curiosity any longer and felt compelled to finally uncover the secrets below. As he approached the hatch, he couldn't help but notice its impressive size. It was large enough to accommodate a person. He pondered how he had missed it until now, but it was likely because his driveway used to be so crowded that the ground below was completely out of sight. After clearing away the debris, the hatch became visible. Jerry knelt beside it and attempted to open it again. Although there was no handle, a noticeable line encircled it, giving the impression that it could be opened. Unfortunately, the metal was weighty. Jerry needed to come up with an alternative plan. Jerry suddenly recalled seeing a screwdriver somewhere along his driveway. With determination, he inserted the screwdriver into the crease and applied all of his strength to push it down. As the hatch lifted, Jerry slid his whole hands underneath and was now able to give the hatch a final push. The hatch hit the ground with a bang and dust puffed up in clouds around it. Jerry had to shield his eyes to avoid the sand, but as soon as everything settled, he looked down. Jerry's eyes widened in shock, and it slowly dawned on him what he was looking at. He had prepared himself for a sewage pipe, but that wasn't at all what he was looking at. Instead, he looked at what seemed like a very long tunnel down under the ground. Jerry carefully peeked over the edge and saw how far down it went. What could be down there? As Jerry looked down below, he also noticed there wasn't a ladder or stairs. He did see a point where once a ladder was attached, but somehow the ladder itself was gone. Jerry knew he had a ladder somewhere in his garage, so he quickly ran inside to look for it. He didn't know if his ladder would be long enough to reach the ground, but he had to try. There was no way he could keep on living his life knowing there could be a secret room underneath his driveway. He quickly walked back and maneuvered his ladder into the tunnel. Suddenly, he heard his neighbor's door opening. "Hi, Jerry," his neighbor happily said. "Oh, hi, Lorraine," Jerry answered. "What do you have there?" she said as she walked up to him. Jerry figured that if there was someone who knew more about this room, it had to be Lorraine. "I found this tunnel under my driveway. Do you know what it could lead to? Maybe the previous owners built it for something," Jerry hopefully asked. "I remember one couple who lived there maybe 20 years ago or so," she finally said. Jerry looked at her, waiting for the rest of her story. "Oh, I have to get the paper. I'm sorry," she continued. Jerry frowned, but then he remembered her memory problems. "All right, I'll talk to you later, Lorraine," he said to his neighbor. He hoped she would be able to tell him more. Now, there was no other option but to go down there himself. He walked back to his garage and grabbed a flashlight, face protection, and a pair of gloves. Jerry wanted to be prepared, hence the gloves and face mask. If the hatch really had been closed for 20 years, who knew what could be down there? He had no desire to get sick from trapped gases and decaying rodent corpses, but he mostly hoped he wouldn't even find those. He put on his face mask and gloves and took one last breath of fresh air. He said a quick prayer and began his descent downward. The ladder stood on the ground all the way down, but since the tunnel was long, it didn't reach the ground Jerry was standing on. Because of this, Jerry had to hang himself down the first few meters before his toes could reach the ladder. His heart was beating hard as he dangled there, desperately trying to find the ladder with his toes. Luckily, he found it, and he managed to descend all the way down. When his feet finally touched the ground, Jerry sighed in relief. He was off that ladder and safely grounded, but everything around him was dark. The only light coming into the space was from the hole he stood under. One step right or left, and he wouldn't be able to see. He grabbed his flashlight and turned it on. In the flashlight's beam, Jerry could see many different kinds of particles floating around, probably dust and sand, but Jerry wasn't sure. He was just glad he decided to wear a mask down there. Breathing that stuff in wouldn't be good for anyone. The light of his flashlight wasn't enough to brighten the whole room, which told Jerry the room had to be huge. He stepped away from the tunnel above so his eyes could get used to the darkness. As his sight began to set in, he was stunned by what he saw. There were boxes piled onto one another in one corner, a little kitchen in the other, and even a crib tucked away behind a table. It was a huge mess, and everything was covered in dirt and grime. To Jerry's horror, he also found the things he wished not to find. Slowly, he shuffled around the room, trying not to trip over things. He put on his gloves and began to move things out of the way. He had many little scares, as cockroaches quickly darted away from underneath the boxes, but he kept going anyway. Jerry knew he never wanted to come down here again, so it was now or never. He managed to rip the tape off of one box and looked inside. It was stuffed with clothing and personal items, probably from the previous owners. Then he suddenly noticed something out of the ordinary. Behind the heap of old clothing, Jerry felt the cold, hard surface of a door. It was expertly concealed, and he wondered how he hadn't noticed it earlier. His heart suddenly raced, thinking of what could be hidden in the secret passageway. The underground room had just become even more intriguing. Upon closer inspection, Jerry saw a padlock guarding the entrance to the mysterious door. Of course, it wouldn't be that easy, he muttered to himself. Every fiber of his being urged him to uncover the truth behind the lock. He became even more resolute in his determination to access the unknown. Frantically searching the dusty room, Jerry's eyes settled on a sturdy metal rod, discarded amongst some rubble. With a surge of adrenaline, he grabbed it, feeling its weight in his hands. His desperation and curiosity piqued, and he thrust the metal rod against the padlock swiftly, hoping to force it open. The lock resisted Jerry's efforts, causing beads of sweat to form on his forehead. Doubt crept into his mind, making him reconsider his decision. But after a few more forceful strikes, he heard a satisfying snap. The door inched open, revealing only darkness beyond its threshold. What was behind the door? Before him was a long staircase, its end shrouded in darkness. The air was colder, carrying a mix of anticipation and unease. Jerry hesitated momentarily, remembering his earlier sentiment of now or never. Taking a deep breath, he cautiously descended deeper into the unknown space below him that was eerily silent. The light from the doorway grew dimmer, forcing him to rely on the faint glow of his flashlight. The walls surrounding him were not of regular construction. They were layered with material and seemed to have an inner lining of metal. He wondered why this hidden room was so well protected. The deeper he went, the memories of news reports about doomsday preppers came to the forefront of Jerry's mind. Could the previous owners have been one of those families preparing for the end times? It seemed an extreme length to go to, but the fortified walls told a tale of desperation. A sinking feeling settled in Jerry's stomach as he realized he was unaware of this part of the house when he bought it. His realtor had gone over every inch of the property's blueprints, and this wasn't mentioned. How could they hide something so monumental, he whispered, feeling betrayed and intrigued. With each and every step, the weight of the unknown bore heavily on Jerry. He couldn't shake off the unnerving thought that perhaps there was a reason why this part of the house was concealed. Dangerous chemicals, illegal activities, or maybe even something supernatural. His imagination ran wild with strange possibilities. Jerry's feet finally touched the level ground, revealing a vast room before him. Rows of sealed boxes, much like the ones he had discovered earlier, lined the walls. However, these boxes were different. They were made of metal, with complex locking mechanisms and warning labels that glinted in the dim light. The boxes, unlike anything Jerry had ever seen, were a puzzle in themselves. Crafted from hardwood and bound by metal, they seemed to reject simple attempts at access. He wrestled with one, trying to pry its lock with the same metal rod, but this time, it proved to be more resilient. After what felt like hours, a faint click echoed through the room. One of the boxes had finally opened. Slowly lifting the lid, Jerry's eyes widened. Inside was a set of aged photographs and, most chillingly, artifacts that looked like they belonged to a time and place of great historical significance. Jerry's heart raced, realization flooding him that he was out of his depth. These were items that shouldn't be tucked away in a hidden basement. They belonged in a museum. The sheer gravity of the discovery pressed upon him, and he knew he had to seek guidance to navigate his options. Jerry pulled out his phone, intending to call the police or maybe an expert. But as he dialed, he was met with silence. Frustrated, he glanced at the screen to find no bars. Of course, he muttered, I'm practically in a fortified bunker. No way a signal can penetrate these walls. Adrenaline fueled him as he packed the artifacts into the box, securing its lid. With the weight of his discovery in hand, Jerry bolted up the stairs. He needed to reach the surface, break free from the underground chamber, and find a place where he could connect with the outside world. Emerging into daylight, Jerry's took his first gasp of fresh air. He dialed 911, the weight of the situation heavy on his shoulders. "You won't believe what I've found in my basement," he began, trying to articulate the magnitude of his discovery, hoping his voice conveyed the urgency of the situation. The operator's voice, calm and even, broke into his explanation. "Sir, are you in any immediate danger?" Jerry sensed the underlying skepticism. "I understand this might sound bizarre," he stammered, realizing how his tale of hidden rooms and mysterious artifacts might sound to an outsider. He had to be taken seriously. "It's not just about me," Jerry pressed on with panic in his voice. "These items, they're old, possibly priceless. They could be stolen." Or worse, he recounted the protected room, the sealed boxes, and the history he held in his hands. "Please," he pleaded, "I need someone to look at this." The familiar wail of sirens grew louder, pulling Jerry from his anxious thoughts. A police car pulled up, followed closely by another. Officers, their expressions a mix of curiosity and caution, approached the house. Jerry rushed to greet them, ready to lead them into the depths of the mystery he found. The officers exchanged puzzled glances as they surveyed the hidden stairwell. "We might be in over our heads," one murmured to another. Jerry, eager to protect the artifacts, chimed in. "These boxes need special handling, perhaps an archaeology or antiquities unit." The leading officer nodded, realizing this wasn't a typical call. As the first box lid was carefully removed, a gasp echoed throughout the room. Stacks of crisp bills, bundled together with rubber bands, greeted them. One box after another, the room became a sea of currency. "This has to be millions," one of the officers whispered, shock evident in his voice. The house was buzzing with activity. Officers cataloged each box, while detectives whispered among themselves, piecing together this unexpected puzzle. The sheer magnitude of the find meant more than just a local inquiry. "We need to go deeper," one detective remarked. "This kind of money doesn't just appear out of nowhere." Detectives began their work by diving deep into the house's history. They found property records, bank transactions, and witness accounts to piece together the story. The trail led them to the couple that sold Jerry the house. But records showed they had vanished without a trace, leaving more questions than answers. As more layers of the investigation came to light, a familiar tale from 2 decades past began to resonate with the detectives. In a bank robbery, the culprits are never caught, and the stolen money is never recovered. The pieces clicked into place, suggesting an answer to the room's enigmatic contents. What if they were the robbers a detective proposed, laying out newspaper clippings of the unsolved heist? The similarities were undeniable. Jerry's house had hidden the secret of 2 fugitives and their ill-gotten gains for 20 years. The unassuming couple had lived a life on the run under everyone's noses. The secretive nature of the bunker, the careful placement underground, it all started making sense. The bunker wasn't for storage, but rather a safe haven for stolen wealth. The fugitives had built a shelter, shielding their ill-gotten gains right under a residential home, ensuring their treasures remained unseen for years. The police, armed with fresh evidence, kick-started a massive manhunt. Alerts were broadcast, photos circulated, and every known associate was questioned. The peaceful town became the epicenter of one of the most extensive search operations it had ever seen. They couldn't have gone far, an officer declared. Weeks turned into months, but persistence paid off. A tip led detectives to a small town on the coast. Surveillance footage, eyewitness accounts, and ultimately, a quiet arrest in a local cafe. The fugitives had aged, thinking they had outwitted the law, but the past has a funny way of resurfacing. Handcuffed and read their rights, the two were taken away by the police. "It was a long time ago," one of them muttered. Their life of riches, filled with fake identities, had come to an end. The town was abuzz, struggling to believe their neighbors could be capable of this crime. With the fugitives apprehended and the stolen cash confiscated, Jerry was left with an expansive underground bunker. Friends joked about turning it into a private movie theater, but for Jerry, it was a constant reminder of the house's dark history. He hoped to turn its tainted past into a hopeful future. In a surprising turn of events, the bank rewarded Jerry for his pivotal role in cracking a case that had long gone cold. The reward was substantial, an amount that would pay off his entire mortgage. Jerry stood in silence as he stared at the check, his mind racing with possibilities. The reward brought relief and joy, but the bunker remained a conundrum. Every evening, Jerry would stand at its entrance, the weight of its history pressing on him. Friends and family offered suggestions: a wine cellar, a gym, maybe a rental space. Each idea made sense, but none really felt right. After weeks of introspection, Jerry's heart steered him towards closure. The bunker had already revealed its secrets, and it felt inappropriate to repurpose it lightly. With the help of some expert contractors, he began the process of sealing it for good, ensuring that its dark tales remained confined to the past.